The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room in the known universe. It floated at the center of a space station the size of a small moon. And inside it, the leaders of 47 different species gathered to decide the fate of civilizations. Today they were discussing a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, a planet called Earth. Ambassador Velis sat in her assigned seat, her four eyes fixed on the holographic image rotating slowly above the central table. Earth looked peaceful from space. Blue oceans, Greenland, white clouds drifting across its surface. It looked like 1,000 other worlds she had seen in her long career. But Velis knew better. She had spent 3 years living among the creatures who called that planet home. She had walked their streets, eaten their food, learned their languages, and studied their history. And what she had learned kept her awake at night. High Commander Tarn stood at the head of the table, his massive gray body covered in ceremonial armor. He was the leader of the Korath military, and he was not happy. "They refused our terms," Tarn announced, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "The humans have rejected the tribute agreement. They will not pay. They will not bow. They have insulted this council." Murmurs spread through the assembled delegates. Some looked angry. Some looked amused. A few looked confused. The Korath Empire had controlled this region of space for 10,000 years. No species had ever refused their demands. Not once. General Knox, Tarn's second-in-command, leaned forward in his seat. He was smaller than Tarn, but twice as cruel. His red eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Then we teach them their place," he said simply. "We send a fleet. We burn a few of their cities. They will learn respect quickly enough." Several delegates nodded in agreement. The Vrix ambassador clicked his claws together in approval. The Molten representative laughed, a sound like grinding stones. "How many ships?" asked Admiral Kess, the commander of the Korath fleet. 100? 200. 50 should be enough, Knox replied with a dismissive wave of his hand. "They are primitives. They have been traveling between stars for less than 50 years. Their weapons are toys compared to ours. Their ships are slow and weak. This will not be a war. It will be an extermination." More laughter filled the chamber. Velis felt her stomach turn. She had heard enough. "I request permission to speak," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to her. Tarn raised one thick eyebrow but nodded. "Permission granted, Ambassador. Though I cannot imagine what you could possibly say in defense of these insects." Illis stood slowly. She was not a soldier. She was not a general. She was a diplomat, trained in words rather than weapons. But right now, words were the only weapons that might save the galaxy from making a terrible mistake. "Attacking Earth would be the greatest error this council has ever made," she said clearly. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the laughter began. It started with Knox and spread through the chamber like a wave. Delegates from a dozen species laughed at her, their amusement filling the vast room. Tarn did not laugh. He stared at Velis with cold, calculating eyes. "Explain yourself, Ambassador. You have lived among these humans. Perhaps they have infected you with their weakness." "They have not made me weak," Velis replied. "They have made me afraid. And if you had seen what I have seen, you would be afraid too." This caught their attention. The Korath did not use the word afraid lightly. Fear was considered a failing, a sign of broken spirit. For an ambassador to admit fear in this chamber was almost unthinkable. "Afraid?" Knox laughed again, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "Afraid of a species that cannot even agree among themselves? They have dozens of nations that constantly fight each other. They are divided and weak. They are divided now," Velis agreed. "But you do not understand what humans become when they have a common enemy. You do not understand what they are capable of when they are united." She walked to the central table and placed her hand on the console. The holographic image of Earth flickered and changed, showing scenes from the planet's history. Scenes of war. Scenes of destruction. Scenes of horror that made several delegates look away. "This is their history," Velis said. "Humanity has been at war with itself since the beginning of their civilization. They have never known true peace. Not for a single generation in 10,000 years." War is not something they fear. War is something they are very, very good at. That only proves they are savages, Tarn said, but his voice was less certain now. No, Velis replied. That proves they are survivors. Every other species in this galaxy found peace before they reached the stars. We stopped fighting among ourselves. We became civilized. But humans? Humans took their wars with them into space. They fight because fighting is what they do. It is who they are. She changed the image again. Now, it showed human soldiers in ancient armor, fighting with swords and spears. Then, soldiers with guns. Then soldiers in tanks and aircraft. Then soldiers in spacesuits, fighting on the surface of Mars. Look at them, Velis said softly. Generation after generation. They build better weapons. They find new ways to kill. Each war makes them stronger, smarter, more dangerous. This is not a species that will surrender. This is a species that will fight until the last one of them is dead. And even then, I am not certain they would stop. The chamber was silent now. No one was laughing anymore. You want to send 50 ships to Earth? Velis asked, looking directly at Nox. I think you should send 5,000. And even then, I would not bet on victory. Nox opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Velis turned back to the full council, her 4 eyes meeting as many gazes as she could. You have not seen what I have seen. You do not know what I know. But I am begging you, as someone who has stood among humans and looked into their eyes, do not attack that planet. Do not give them a reason to turn their weapons toward us. She sat down, her heart's pounding in her chest. The silence stretched on for a very long time. High Commander Tarn broke the silence first. He leaned back in his massive chair and crossed his arms over his armored chest. His face showed nothing, but Velis could see the thoughts moving behind his cold eyes. He was considering her words. That was something, at least. Pretty speech, Ambassador Tarn said slowly. But speeches do not win wars. Facts do. And the facts are simple. Humans have been in space for 50 years. We've been conquering worlds for 10,000. Their largest warship is smaller than our smallest transport vessel. Their weapons cannot even scratch our armor. How exactly do you expect them to fight us? Velis stood again. She had prepared for this question. In truth, she had been preparing for this moment ever since she first set foot on Earth and realized what humanity truly was. May I show you? She asked. Tart nodded, activated her personal archive. A device implanted in her wrist that contained every piece of information she had gathered during her time on Earth. The holographic display above the table changed. Again, showing a single human male standing in a field of mud and blood. This man was called Junho, Velis explained. He was a soldier in one of their ancient wars nearly 300 years ago. His army was losing. His leaders had retreated. It was surrounded by enemies on all sides, with no hope of rescue and no chance of victory. And he surrendered, Nox said with a snort, as any sensible creature would. No. Velis shook her head. He fought for 3 more days, alone. He killed 47 enemy soldiers before they finally brought him down. And when they captured him, bleeding and broken, do you know what he said? The chamber was silent. He said, I would do it again. She changed the image. Now it showed a human female in a white coat working in some kind of laboratory. Her face was pale and thin, her eyes surrounded by dark circles. This woman was called Yunji. She was a scientist during a great plague that killed millions of her people. She worked for 18 days without sleep, trying to find a cure. The plague infected her on the 4th day. She knew she was dying. She kept working anyway. She finished her research on the 16th day and saved millions of lives. She died 2 days later, still holding her notes. Another image. A young man with burns covering half his body. This was Seojin, who was a firefighter person whose job was to run into burning buildings to save strangers. The building was collapsing. Its commanders ordered him to retreat. He went back inside 3 more times and carried out 4 children. The building fell on him during his 4th trip. He survived, barely. When they asked him why he did it, He looked confused by the question, said there were people inside. What else was I supposed to do? Velis looked around the chamber. She had their attention now. Every delegate was watching the images with a mixture of horror and fascination. These are not exceptional humans, she continued. These are ordinary ones. I have thousands of stories like this. Millions. Their entire history is filled with people who refuse to quit, who refuse to die, who refuse to accept that something was impossible. She showed more images in rapid succession. A ship sinking. In frozen water, while musicians played music to calm the dying passengers, soldiers charging into certain death to protect civilians they had never met. Doctors working through earthquakes and hurricanes to save the injured. Parents lifting impossibly heavy objects to free their trapped children. Humans have a word, Velis said. They call it sacrifice. It means giving up your own life so that others might live. Most species in this galaxy understand this concept. We have soldiers who die in battle. We have heroes who fall, protecting their homes. But for humans, sacrifice is not rare. It is expected. It is normal. It is woven into the very fabric of their society. She paused, letting her words sink in. I met an old woman named Myong during my time on Earth. She was 78 years old. In her life, she had survived 3 different cancers of disease where their own bodies try to kill them. She had lost her husband, 2 of her children, and her home in a natural disaster. When I met her, she was volunteering at a shelter for homeless people, cooking meals and giving advice to young mothers. Velis's voice softened. She could still smile after everything she had been through. She laughed at me. She said, "What else would I do? Give up? That's not how we work, dear." General Knox shifted uncomfortably in his seat. These are just stories, Ambassador. Emotional tricks. They prove nothing about military capability. Do they not? Velis turned to face him directly. You think war is about ships and weapons? Most species, you would be right. But humans do not fight wars the way we do. They fight wars with their souls. She pulled up historical data on the display. Numbers and statistics replaced the images. In their last global war, 60 million humans died. 60 million. That is more than the entire population of the Vrix homeworld. Cities were destroyed. Nations were burned to the ground. And you know what happened afterward? No one answered. They rebuilt. Within 20 years, the losing nations had become some of the strongest economies on their planet. Within 50 years, the cities that had been reduced to rubble were gleaming centers of technology and culture.
No.
They did not just survive, they grew stronger. Velis deactivated the display and stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. You want to bomb their cities? They've rebuilt from worse? You want to kill their soldiers? They'll turn civilians into armies? You want to break their spirit? Their spirit cannot be broken. I have tried to find a weakness, a crack, something we could exploit. There's nothing. Humanity is not a species that can be conquered. They can only be destroyed completely. And even then, I am not certain it would work. She walked slowly back to her seat. So I ask you again, is attacking Earth truly what this council wants to do? The silence that followed was heavier than before. Even Knox had nothing to say. Admiral Kess raised her hand to speak. She was the oldest Korath in the chamber, her gray skin wrinkled with age, her eyes sharp with centuries of experience. She had commanded fleets before Tarn was born. She had conquered worlds before Knox learned to walk. When she spoke, even the High Commander listened. Ambassador Velis Kess said, her voice like grinding stone, I have heard your stories. They are impressive. But you speak of the past. Ancient wars fought with primitive weapons. Courage is admirable, but courage does not stop plasma fire. Spirit does not deflect orbital bombardment. Tell me, what can humans actually do to threaten our forces today? Velis nodded slowly. This was the question she had been waiting for. Thank you, Admiral. You are right to ask. Let me show you what humans have been doing since we made first contact. She activated the display again. This time, it showed a map of the human solar system. Earth sat at the center, surrounded by dozens of small stations and satellites. 12 years ago, humanity learned they were not alone in the universe. They learned that there were other species out there, some friendly, some not. They learned that the galaxy was vast and dangerous, and that they were very, very small. She zoomed in on the orbital stations around Earth. This is what they built in response. 97 orbital defense platforms, each one armed with nuclear weapons, powerful enough to crack the hull of a Koroth battleship. They built them in secret, disguised as mining stations and research facilities. Our intelligence did not discover them until 2 months ago. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Nuclear weapons were primitive, yes, but they were also extremely effective at causing damage. A single nuclear explosion inside a ship could kill everyone aboard, no matter how advanced their technology. It gets worse, Velis continued. These stations are not designed to win a battle. They are designed to cause maximum damage before being destroyed. The humans call them martyrs. Each station is built around a fusion core that will overload upon destruction, creating an explosion 5 times more powerful than its weapon's payload. They are bombs pretending to be defense platforms. She showed another image. A human warship, small and angular, nothing like the elegant curves of Koroth design. This is the United Earth ship Tajon, named after one of their ancient warriors. It is their newest class of warship. It is fast, heavily armed for its size, and crewed by volunteers who know they are unlikely to survive extended combat against superior forces. Volunteers? Admiral Kess raised an eyebrow. They use volunteers for suicide missions? They have more volunteers than ships, Velis replied quietly. When the first call went out for combat crews, over 2 million humans applied. The selection process rejected 90% of them. The remaining candidates fought each other for positions. They want to fight us, Admiral. They are eager for it. General Knox finally found his voice again. This is madness. What kind of species wants to die? They do not want to die, Velis explained. They want to protect their families. They want to defend their planet. They want to prove that humanity cannot be bullied. They want to hurt us so badly that we will never threaten them again. Death is simply the price they are willing to pay. She changed the display once more. Now it showed a human face. A man in military uniform, his expression calm and serious. This is Admiral Young-Soo, commander of Earth's combined space forces. I have met him several times during diplomatic negotiations. He is polite. He is respectful. He smiles icily and laughs at jokes. But behind his eyes, there is something cold, something patient, something waiting. Celeste leaned forward. I asked him once during a private dinner what he would do if the Koroth attacked Earth. He smiled at me and said, "We would make you regret it." I asked him how. He said, "Ambassador, your empire spans 1,000 worlds. You have trillions of citizens. You have built a civilization that has lasted 10,000 years. That is a lot to lose. Earth is just one planet. We have nothing to lose, and that makes us very, very dangerous." The chamber had gone completely silent. He then told me something I will never forget, Velis continued. He said, "You think in terms of victory. We think in terms of cost. We know we cannot beat you in a fair fight, so we will not fight fair. We will make the cost of conquering Earth so high that you will wish you had never heard of us. And if we cannot stop you, if you do somehow destroy our planet, then every human in every colony, on every station, on every ship across the galaxy will spend the rest of their lives hunting your species to extinction. That is not a threat, Ambassador. That is a promise." Velis deactivated the display and stood in the silence. Humans have a concept called total war. It means that when they fight, everyone fights, not just soldiers. Civilians make weapons in factories. Children carry messages and spy on enemies. Old people hide fighters in their homes. Women become snipers and saboteurs. There is no surrender. There is no negotiation. There is only victory or death. She looked at each member of the council in turn. No species in the galaxy does. When our soldiers fall, we retreat. When our cities are threatened, we negotiate. We understand that some battles are not worth fighting. Humans do not think this way. They will fight in the ruins of their cities. They will fight with sticks and stones after their weapons are gone. They will fight with their bare hands if they must, and they will never, ever stop. Admiral Kess was staring at the blank display, her ancient eyes troubled. I conquered 47 worlds in my career, she said slowly. I broke empires. I crushed rebellions. But I have never faced an enemy that wanted to die as long as they could take me with them. She turned to look at Velis. You truly believe they would fight to extinction? I do not believe it, Velis replied. I know it. I have read their history. I have studied their wars. I have looked into their eyes. Humanity would rather burn than kneel, and they would make absolutely certain that we burned with them. Kess nodded slowly and said nothing more. The Vrix ambassador clicked his claws nervously. He was a small creature, covered in hard blue shell, with eyes that moved independently of each other. The Vrix had joined the Korath Empire 3,000 years ago, after a brief war that lasted exactly 4 days. They understood the wisdom of surrender. Perhaps, the Vrix said carefully, we could simply destroy Earth from orbit. No invasion. No ground war. Just eliminate the planet and be done with it. Velis turned to face him. She had expected this suggestion. In some ways, it was the most logical response to the threat she had described. Kill them all before they could become a problem. That would certainly eliminate Earth, Velis agreed. But it would not eliminate humanity. In the 12 years since first contact, humans have spread across 13 different star systems. They have colonies on 27 planets and moons. They have mining stations in asteroid belts and research facilities orbiting gas giants. They have ships traveling between stars at this very moment. She pulled up a new display showing the spread of human civilization. Dots of light appeared across the galactic map, far more than most delegates had expected. Destroy Earth, and you create 7 billion martyrs. Every human who survives will dedicate their existence to revenge. Their children will grow up hearing stories of the monsters who killed their homeworld. Their grandchildren will inherit the hatred. Their great-grandchildren will still be hunting us. The Vrix ambassador's shell darkened with unease. Surely they would see reason eventually. Time heals all wounds, as they say, does it? Velis shook her head. Let me tell you about human memory, Ambassador. They have conflicts on their world that have lasted for hundreds of years. They have feuds between families that span dozens of generations. They have grudges over events that happened before any living human was born. They write songs about their grievances. They teach their children to remember. They celebrate anniversaries of ancient battles and ancient wrongs. She showed an image of a human city, beautiful and modern. With ancient monuments scattered throughout, this city is called Seoul. It is one of their great capitals. Scattered throughout it are monuments to wars fought centuries ago. Humans visit these monuments regularly. They bring their children. They tell them stories. They make sure the next generation remembers. Velis let that sink in before continuing. If we destroy Earth, we will become the greatest villain in human history. They will remember us for 10,000 years. They will hunt us for 10,000 years. And they will never, ever forgive. High Commander Tarn finally spoke again. His voice was quieter now, less certain. You paint a frightening picture, Ambassador. But surely you exaggerate. They are one species. We control 1,000 worlds. How much damage could they really do? Let me tell you about human adaptability, Velis replied. When we made first contact, humans had barely mastered travel between planets in their own system. Their fastest ships could reach perhaps 1/10 of light speed. Their weapons were primitive chemical explosives and crude nuclear devices. She changed the display to show technical specifications. This is what they have now. In 12 years, they have reverse-engineered our faster-than-light communication systems. Their scientist Jisoo cracked the encryption in 3 months encryption that took us 40 years to develop. They have copied our shield technology and improved it. Their newest ships can reach half the speed of our fastest vessels, and they are still improving. General Knox looked genuinely disturbed now. How is that possible? We gave them nothing. We shared no technology. Did not need to share it, Velis explained. They stole it. They observed our ships during diplomatic visits and recorded everything. They captured signals from our communication arrays. They analyzed the alloys and the gifts we gave their leaders. Everything they could find, they studied. Everything they studied, they learned. Everything they learned, they improved. She showed another image, a laboratory filled with humans working frantically at complex machinery. This is their primary research facility. It operates around the clock every day, without rest. They have teams working in shifts, passing knowledge from one group to the next. They call it standing on the shoulders of giants. Each generation takes what the previous generation learned and builds upon it. Progress that takes us centuries takes them decades. Progress that takes us decades takes them years. Admiral Kess leaned forward. And if we attack, this process will accelerate. Exactly, Velas nodded grimly. Right now, humanity is divided. They argue among themselves. Their nations compete for resources and status. Their scientists work on different projects without coordination. Their military is fragmented across dozens of commands. She paused, making sure every delegate was listening. But the moment we fire on Earth, all of that ends. Their nations will unite under a single government. Their scientists will share every secret. Their military will become one force with one purpose. Everything that makes them weak will vanish, and everything that makes them strong will multiply. The molten representative, who had laughed earlier, now spoke in a voice like grinding gravel. You speak of them as if they were a sleeping beast that we should not wake. That is exactly what they are, Velas confirmed. Humanity is a predator species. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them constantly. They survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and each other. They are designed for conflict. They are built for war. The only reason they have not turned their full attention toward us is because they are too busy fighting among themselves. She let the silence stretch for a moment. Attack Earth, and you will give them something they have never truly had before. A common enemy, a shared purpose, a reason to stop fighting each other and start fighting together. You will unite them in ways their own leaders have failed to do for thousands of years. You will create the most dangerous force this galaxy has ever seen. The chamber was heavy with tension. No one seemed to want to speak. The confident arrogance from earlier had completely disappeared. So tell me, Velas said quietly, is that really what this council wants to do? The silence in the chamber stretched on for what felt like hours. Velas had said everything she could say. She had shown them the evidence. She had painted the picture as clearly as she knew how. Now the decision rested with the council. High Commander Tarn stood slowly. He was no longer the confident warrior who had demanded tribute and threatened destruction. His massive gray form seemed somehow smaller, his cold eyes troubled. Ambassador Velas, he said carefully, you have served this council for many years. You have negotiated treaties with 100 species. You have never spoken like this before. You have never shown fear. I've never had reason to, Velas replied simply. Every species I have encountered understood the basic rules of survival. They knew when to fight and when to surrender. They valued their lives above their pride. But humans are different. They are broken in a way that makes them terrifying. They would rather die than submit. They would rather burn their own worlds than let us take them. General Knox finally stood as well. The arrogance had drained from his face, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. I have spent my life studying warfare, Ambassador. I have fought a dozen campaigns against a dozen species. I always believed that victory was simply a matter of superior firepower. But you describe something I have never faced. An enemy that cannot be intimidated. An enemy that welcomes death. I do not know how to fight such an enemy. You do not fight them, Velas said. That is my point. You find another way. Admiral Kess rose from her seat, her ancient body moving with surprising grace. She walked to the central display and stared at the image of Earth still floating above the table. I remember the last species that fought like this, she said quietly. The Vorn. They were a small civilization barely spanning 3 systems. When we demanded their submission, they refused. When we attacked, they fought back. It took us 40 years to defeat them. 40 years and 200 ships, and 8 million Koroth lives. And in the end, there was nothing left to conquer. They destroyed their own worlds rather than let us have them. She turned to face the council. The Vorn were one species on 3 planets. Humanity is one species on dozens of planets with colonies spreading across the galaxy as we speak. If the Vorn cost us 8 million lives, how many will humanity cost? How many ships? How many worlds? How many generations? Silence answered her. Velis stood one final time. She walked to the center of the chamber and looked at each member of the council in turn. These were the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. They commanded fleets that could darken the skies of any world. They ruled over trillions of lives. And right now, they looked afraid. "I am going to tell you something that I learned on Earth," she said. "Something that I think about every night when I try to sleep."
Hey.
Everyone was listening. "I met a human child named Subin. She was 8 years old. Her father was a soldier, and her mother was a scientist. She was bright and curious, and asked me hundreds of questions about the galaxy. I liked her very much." Velis's voice softened slightly. "One day, she asked me what I would do if someone tried to hurt my family. I told her I would fight to protect them. She nodded seriously and said, 'Me too.' I asked her what she would do if the enemy was too strong, if she could not possibly win. She looked at me with those strange human eyes and said, 'Then I would hurt them so badly that they would never hurt anyone else again.'" Velis let the words hang in the air. She was 8 years old. A child, and already she understood. If you cannot win, you make the enemy pay. If you cannot survive, you make sure they regret ever threatening you. This is not something they are taught. It is something they are born with. It is in their blood, in their bones, in the very core of who they are. She walked slowly toward the exit of the chamber. "You may attack Earth if you wish. I cannot stop you, but I will not be here to see it. I am requesting immediate reassignment to the far rim of the galaxy, as far from Koroth space as possible." Tarn raised an eyebrow. "Why?" Velis stopped at the door and looked back. "Because if you attack humanity, they will come for us. All of them. They will not stop until we are destroyed or they are. And I intend to be as far away from the retaliation as I can possibly get. The far rim might be far enough." I hope she paused one final time, but I doubt it. Then she walked out. The council sat in stunned silence for a long moment. Finally, High Commander Tarn spoke, his voice heavy with a weight it had never carried before. "All in favor of revisiting our diplomatic approach with Earth?" Every hand in the chamber rose. 3 months later, Ambassador Velis stood on an observation deck on Earth's primary orbital station. Beside her stood Admiral Youngsu, the same man who had promised to make the Koroth regret any attack. Today he was smiling warmly as they watched a joint human-Koroth science vessel depart for deep space exploration. "You know," Youngsu said casually, "we were actually terrified of you. Your empire spans 1,000 worlds. Your ships could have crushed us in weeks. We built those defense stations hoping they would buy us time, not victory." Velis laughed, a sound that would have shocked her colleagues. She had learned laughter from humans. "We were terrified of you. A species that straps explosives to their own children if it means hurting the enemy. How could we not be afraid?" Youngsu nodded thoughtfully. "Funny how that works. Both sides too scared to make the first move." "Perhaps that is wisdom," Velis replied. "Perhaps the galaxy is better when humanity has friends instead of enemies." "We have always been better at making friends anyway," Youngsu agreed with a slight smile. "It is the enemies who should worry." In the distance, a young girl named Subin pressed her face against the observation window, watching the stars with wonder in her eyes. She was 11 now. She dreamed of exploring the galaxy. She did not know that her species had just been judged too dangerous to fight, and perhaps that was for the best.